Hello everyone, I'm Theo Eschardt from Henry Stewart Events, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, The Art of Mastering End-to-End Marketing Campaigns with Agency Partnerships, kindly sponsored by Fadel. There will be time at the end of the session dedicated to the Q&A, so please send through your questions at any point using the Questions tab in the top right corner of your GoToWebinar window. Also a reminder that a recording of this session will be sent to you tomorrow, so you can view it again at your own pace. Now it's my great pleasure to pass you over to Greg Guest, Vice President of Product Management at Fadel. Thank you, Greg. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Theo. And thanks to Henry Stewart for having me back. Always a pleasure to be here with the Henry Stewart crew. And thank you to all of you for tuning in today and joining me on this Wednesday. It's Fall Wednesday, Autumn Wednesday here in New York for our latest series of webinars here. So I'm Greg Guest. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Vice President of Product Management at Fadel. And we specialize in brand protection solutions for large brands, consumer brands mainly. And I've been working in this field for over 15 years, helping customers manage their brand, protect their brand, stay compliant with licensing agreements, talent rights, as well as royalties and that side of the business as well. So today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different because we usually come at this largely from the rights management perspective, those of you that know me. But today we're talking about it really from a collaboration perspective in collaborating with agencies and how you can best collaborate with agencies throughout your marketing life cycle and throughout the asset life cycle so that you have a better, more efficient, transparent process with any agencies that you're working with. We work with a lot of different brands, and a lot of those brands are large global brands, and they work with agencies, sometimes multiple agencies, or they may also have in-house agencies. And one of the challenges we hear about the most is that they lose, when they're working with an agency, they lose visibility into the assets and a lot of data about the assets. So they may get an asset from their agency, but they're not getting the proper data around how that asset was created, what the talent was that was used in that asset, what the rights are associated to that asset. And they may get this information not at all, or they may get it in ways that are inefficient or too late in the process for them to be able to have visibility into that data, which really is needed to make decisions about how to use those assets, how you can use those assets in various campaigns as you roll out a marketing campaign for your brand. So having transparency and visibility is really important. And it's not like the agency is trying to hide something. It's usually a case of there isn't a good process in place and there aren't the right tools in place to facilitate a really good collaborative working relationship with the agency. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to show you some best practices and some ideas for the kinds of tools that you might want to employ to make your relationships with your agencies better. And what that's going to do is it's going to really help you have more of an effective collaboration with your agency. It's going to be, things are going to move faster. So you're going to get speed if you have that kind of defined process and tools in place with your agency. Things are going to move faster. You'll get to market quicker. And also a measure of accountability, because you want to be able, as the brand, to hold your agencies accountable for what they're giving you, and that if they're giving you assets, that you can use those assets first and foremost in the campaigns that you need to, and that you have all the information you need to protect your brand and be compliant with any talent restrictions that might be related to those assets. So again, it's really about fostering collaboration in order to be able to protect your brand. And that's kind of the angle we always come at things from here at Fidel, is brand protection. But from a collaboration perspective with your agency, you really want to leverage technology. This is where technology is your friend, for things like centralizing your brand assets and your creative work in a single space, where your agency can share with you not just a finished asset, but the raw files, the raw materials that they're using to create those actual final campaign assets. Because you're going to need to know data about what was used in that final asset. And there may be a gold mine of assets that you can mine that came out of that process, but you can't mine that wealth of assets if you don't have the right data on how you can use those later. And we're going to talk about that a little later in the process. Collaboration techniques, so being able to really work collaboratively with your agency. So you have some methodology where they can, give you assets, you can review assets, you can send information to them, they can send information to you. It's going to be important that you can navigate the rights that are associated with the asset. We all know we're doing a ton of video these days. Video has multiple clips in it. Typically, those clips have different talent. You have music rights, you have rights that are getting more and more complex over time. And so you need to be able to have visibility into that so you can navigate those rights to understand, again, how you can use assets and how you can't use assets. And also those relationships between assets is becoming really important to be able to have the data to manage, which is, what are the individual components of my final campaign video? Because those individual components, those clips, might have different talent in it. And if they have different talent in it, they might have different rights associated to them. And if I want to use that final asset in different ways, I might need to change those clips. I might need to re-edit. Or if I want to reuse those clips in other videos, I can save money by reusing them. But again, I have to have that information on the relationships between my assets and the data on the rights for my assets. And that's the only way you can really ensure that everything you're doing is going to be aligned with your brand, with your messaging, and stay compliant with your talent agreements as you go to use these assets. And you can mitigate the risk of having expired assets out there or publishing a video in a place where it shouldn't be published. So there's various ways to approach this, and I'm sure some of these ways, for those of you that are already working with agencies, you're already doing some of this stuff, or at least, you know, you have touch points with your agency in different ways. And that might be anything from you're trading emails with your agency, or you're using a file system to swap back and forth. Maybe it's an FTP site, maybe it's something like a Dropbox or something like that, or a box where you're using shared access to a file system to exchange things with your agency. Maybe you have a workflow tool, and this is kind of you're working your way up the maturity curve here. Maybe you have a workflow tool in place that helps automate that connection between you and your agency, something like a Workfront or something like that. Or maybe you do have like a secure portal or space where you can give access to your agency to share data, and you can review it and have that collaborative nature in a portal like a SharePoint maybe, or something like that. Or like in today's demo, I'm going to use Brand Vision, which is Fidel's brand protection platform, which offers some capabilities around collaboration and providing a space for your agency. And that's really what it's about, is providing a space, a safe space, if you will, for your agency to work in, where they can share everything with you, and they have easy tools to be able to share the data that you're going to need. It's going to make it easier to both keep track of everything in one place for a particular campaign with a particular agency, as well as be able to hold them accountable, because it's easier to enforce the process if the process is more efficient for them to use. So no matter which of these you're doing, you may not be at kind of the secure portal step on that curve yet, but it doesn't matter. I want you to take away today some of the best practices we're going to really be talking about. And I'll highlight as I go through this, even though I'm showing it to you in a specific mode on a specific platform, that these things are best practices that we're going to be talking about as far as what you should be looking to do during that collaborative effort with your agency. And these are them kind of these are the steps that we're going to go through in the demo today, just to tee it up so you understand what you're seeing as I walk through it. We're going to start from the brand side, and the first thing you want to be able to do as your brand, again, is set up that space for your agency, some sort of space where your agency can interact with you and provide the assets and provide the data that you're going to want them to capture. And then it's useful to set up some sort of project designation for that and define a project. You might have multiple campaigns you're working on with your agency. So you want this to be very organized, and you want to be able to have that space for the agency. And then within that space, have a bucket for that project essentially. And again, if you're doing this on a secure portal, like I'm going to show you, you might actually have something called project that you can define, or like if you're using Workfront or something, you might be able to define a project object and have that be what the agency is working on. If you're working on a file share or something, you might not have that ability, but you can set up a folder, right? So you could have a folder for each project. So again, it's an organizational method that will help focus your agency to give you what you need where you need it, so you can find it all very easily. So you set up a space, you set up a project, and then your agency is off and running. And then the best practice you really want to enforce is that you're getting your agency to provide, capture and provide the data as soon as they have it, as soon as they can get it, give it to you. You don't want to be scrambling later once you have your final campaign to go back to your agency and say, I need to know the rights for this asset. I don't have any. I want to expand my campaign. Can I do that? Yes or no? That's going to slow you down. You might have a hard time even getting an answer in some cases at that point because the agency's moved on to the next project, right? So you want to try and get everything as early as you can. So you want to enforce with your agency the ability to capture all the talent information right up front. They're hiring talent for the project. They're doing agreements with the talent. They're getting rights from the talent for in our case, we're going to use a video example. So for the videos they're going to shoot with that talent, that information is all available to be captured. So if you give them an easy way to capture it at the outset of the process, then later when the assets are created and they shoot that video and they come back and upload the assets, it's much easier for the agency to simply at that point, when again they're done with the creative pretty much and they want to be moving on to the next thing, they can simply link those assets to the talent that they captured, to the project that it was produced for, and to the final composited assets that they created from the raw footage. And all that information will link up and you'll have all that information at your fingertips in this space you've created. And then when you come back as the brand, you'll be able to review it, approve it. You'll be able to see the availability from rights perspective for those assets. You'll be able to do real-time clearance on that data. Again, depending upon what tool you're using or how sophisticated you are or advanced you are on that curve, you'll see in Brand Vision today some real-time clearance checking capability. But you'll have access to that data, so you'll be able to analyze that data using whatever tools you have available. And you'll be able to get reporting. Again, depending upon what type of reporting you can generate off the data, you can have reporting around your talent, your agreements that you're doing. And then, from a brand protection perspective, things like expirations, renewals, etc. So sounds like a lot, I know there, but I just wanted to put it all out so that you, as we go through it, because it is kind of a lot of steps, that you'll already have this in your brain and you'll kind of will make more sense as we go through it. So let's jump right into the demo. Let me take you into that. I'm going to start off here in Brand Vision as my brand, Susie Blue. Those of you that watch our webinars are familiar with Susie Blue, our fictional apparel lifestyle brand. And I'm signing into Brand Vision into my Susie Blue Brand Vision system here. And now because I'm the brand, I have access to all kinds of stuff that I've worked on in the past, other campaigns I've done, all my assets across all of my different projects that I've worked on over time, and a slew of options up here along the top for administration and reporting and workflow and things like that. But the first thing I want to do is create a space outside of this specifically for my agency. So I want to, again, have that ability to create something specifically for my agency. In this case, A Plus Agency is our fictional agency we're working with. And I want to be able to create a space for the agency. And again, in Brand Vision here, it's kind of a segregated business unit designation where I can set that up and it's a blank space. And you can see it's an empty blank canvas to start with. But again, that might be a folder structure, or a page on a shared portal, or a workflow project or something like that. But you want to have that space set up, and then within that, again, as I mentioned, you want to be able to ideally create some definition of a project for that. So I want to be able to, now that I've created this A plus agency space, I also want to be able to create a project here for it. And I've gone ahead and done that already, which is my athletic apparel campaign project that I've created. And over time, you'll see as we add things to that project, I'll get a singular view of that project as I have the agency capture that detail. So right now it's really kind of just, again, think of it as an empty folder that the agency is going to put stuff into. So I've set up a space, I've set up a project, and then I want to provision access. So I actually can go in and set up a user specifically for that. And again, I've done some of the work here in advance, like the cooking show. I've pre-cooked this a little bit. So I've got Alan Agency here, who's my agency user. And, I've been able to, because I'm using a portal here, I'm able to set up an actual user with an email address, password, et cetera. But what's most important from a best practice standpoint is that you can secure what that agency has access to. So again, in this case, my agency only has access to A plus agency space. And I'm further limiting Alan's access to certain roles related to the access. So Alan only has access to the A plus agency space, and he can only create content, which means he's going to be able to add assets, and he can only capture rights, which means he's going to be able to capture talent and rights and agreements. So I've limited his role. So in other words, he won't have access to the reports or the administration or the workflow or all the other things that my portal might offer. So whatever you're doing, again, if you're doing this in a shared drive, it might be access to that folder, right? The sharing that folder, limiting his access to a specific folder that it's shared with, et cetera. So it's going to depend on your technology that you're using. But the best practice here is you want to be able to limit Alan's view of what he can see. Obviously, you don't want an agency seeing any other agency's work if you're working with multiple agencies. So now I've set up my space, I've set up my project, I've given access to Alan Agency. He is ready to go. He's ready to get going with this project. So I'm going to log out, and now I'm going to log back in as Alan. So Alan has received an email saying, no, agency. Alan has received an email saying, you've granted access to our portal, and he's going to come back in and log in. And of course, he's going to see it's a blank slate because there's nothing there yet. Okay, now you'll just notice the menuing up top is very limited, right? And that's because I limited his access. So I'm limited to him to exactly what I need him to be able to do here. And so Alan is excited. They're producing this awesome video for the Susie Blue athletic campaign. He's so excited that he has this space to upload it. So he immediately comes in and goes, man, you're going to love this video that we created. I'm going to upload it here. It's the Susie Blue athletic apparel video, final version. He's going to athletic campaign, give it a description. It's a video. He's going to change the type here, and he's going to upload that for the brand. Now that's going to upload into the portal here within his space. And he's super excited. He can't wait to hear what the brand thinks of this video. So there's only one problem with this, which is that he hasn't provided any other information around this final asset. So it may be very cool, and the agency can look at it and see that, yeah, it's a cool video. They did a great job on the edit. They used this clip of a runner. They used this clip of a boxer. So these are the models that they used as our talent that they used in this, a boxer and a swimmer. It looks great. We love it. But the problem is, if I look at the data for this, there's really no data. I don't know who the talent is. And if I look at the rights, there's no rights information captured with this. So this doesn't do me a lot of good. And so that's today what a lot of the brands are saying they're getting from their agency. I'm getting the final asset, and I'm not getting a lot of visibility into the final asset itself and what the data about that asset is. So let's back up for a second. Let's back up here and go back, and let's say instead of just uploading the final asset, let's force Alan Agency to go through the best practice. Okay, so that best practice would start with hiring the talent. So the first thing he's going to do is actually hire the models that are going to be in these videos. And he can capture that data here by in this space where I've got a folder, so to speak, of party data. And in each one of these records here, I can capture information about that particular talent. In this case, Adrian Actor, and she's both a model and an actor. And I can capture whatever information I want here about the party. And then once I know that, so this is cool because it kind of becomes like a talent Rolodex as well that you can uh, 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 view back to later for talent you want to reuse. So that's another great reason to capture the data here. And now he knows he's going to hire three models for this: Adrian, Farah, and Molly, because he needs a boxer, a swimmer, and a runner for the concept. And then he can capture the agreements for the talent here. So he can come in and he can say, I'm going to capture a new agreement. It might have some sort of agreement designation for the Susie Blue that they're doing. You might have different types of agreements. In this case, it's a talent agreement. And I can select the talent that it's for example, Adrian actor. And then I can put in some start dates and end dates for that, so that I have a date range for that. And then I can actually also capture the rights right here. So I can say for this agreement with Adrian, I've got certain rights, and I can associate it to the project. So I can say for the Susie Blue Athletic Apparel Campaign project, these are the rights I'm getting from Adrian. I'm getting rights to North America, and I'm getting digital channels and social media channels. So I can publish this on social media like Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, and digital channels like my website or my retail partners, etc. Okay, so I can capture all that information here really easily and save that information. I've already gone ahead and pre-baked that as well. And I've got that captured here. So I've got the three agreements for Adrian, Farah, and Molly, the three talent that I've already captured here. So step one of the best practice is capture the talent and the agreement and the rights that you're working with, that as an agency, and tie that back to the project that they're hired for. And that really happens very early in the process from a business process perspective. So by giving them a tool like this and a place to capture that, it's easier for you to say, capture that data when you make those agreements, right? Once that agreement's signed and executed, drop it in here. You'll come back to it later once you produce the assets, rather than trying to get them to do it after, which is much harder. So now I've got the agreements set up, and I've tied them to the project. And again, if I look at that project now, I can see that now with this project space that I created, or this project bucket, I think I called it earlier, I can see those associations. So I can immediately already see, no assets have been sent to me or produced, but I can already see the three talent that were hired for this, and the agreements that are related to those talent here. For the models and the actors that I'm going to be using in these assets. Okay, great. So Alan did a great job on that, right? Now his team goes out, they go do the video shoot, and they shoot a bunch of raw video, and now he's going to upload that raw video. So another best practice here: have a place where they can upload that raw video, because you're never going to know when you might want to reuse some of that raw video later. That either was used in the final asset or was not used in the final asset. But if you don't get access to it with the data that you need for it, then it's going to be very hard to do that. And again, harder to go back later and try to get that from the agency. So if you provide an easy way and space for them to do that here, you'll have a better chance of being able to enforce that best practice. So Alan's team went out, they shot some videos. For the final, they shot a video of a boxer, a runner, and a swimmer. So I'm going to upload all three of those videos here. I'm going to tag it as athletic videos. Okay, and I'm going to say these are videos. And again, I'm going to upload those into my space here from the agency. So now I'm uploading those three videos. And again, if I just did that, that would be great, because I'd have the raw video, but I wouldn't have all the information I need about those raw videos. So there's a couple other best practice steps in there that you want to enforce with your agency, which is, I don't know who the talent is in these, and I'm not, unless they're celebrities, I can't look at this and know which one is Molly, which is Farah, and which is Adrian, right? So I need the agency to provide that information, so they can actually come into that, each one of those, and come into the boxer here and say, who is this? Okay, this is Adrian. And they can come into the contributors and say, I want to add Adrian to this. So, and because Adrian has multiple roles, I can select which role. So Adrian's a model in this particular thing, and I can save that. And then I can go back to the others. I can go to the swimmer, and I can say, okay, the swimmer here is Molly, I believe, is the swimmer. So I'll add Molly to this. And then for the runner, the runner is, our last one is Farah. And so I can add Farah here, and Farah will be added to that. Okay, so now I've associated all the uh, talent with the assets that they're in. And now there's one more step, which I need to do, which is just to drop them in that project, right? So I want to take all three of those and I want to drop them into that project, which is adding them to my project. And here's my Susie Blue Athletic Campaign Apparel project. I'm going to add the boxer, the runner, and the swimmer to it. And when I do that, essentially I'm just like dropping them in a folder, right? And now they're all added to that project. And now if I go look at that project, not only do I see the talent and the agreements, I can also see that there are three assets associated with this project. And there's my three assets for the runner, the swimmer, and the boxer. So now, pretty easily, Alan has been able to give me all the raw assets and all the information I need about them, which is who the talent is in them. Because by attaching them to the talent and the project, inherently, I already had that data. So if I go look at this video, I can actually see the contributor is Adrian and it's tied to Adrian's agreement. And I can see the rights for this. So I can see that the rights are all territories for social media, digital, and broadcast for this particular asset because I provided that information up front that her agreement has these rights and she's in this asset for this project. Brand Vision's able to make that connection. Again, whether you can do that in the method that you're using depends on your technology. But the closer you can get to having all this data associated with this asset, the better off you're going to be. And I apologize, I don't know why it failed there, but that was just with the video. But so I've got everything here that I need now that Alan's uploaded, and there's one more step for Alan to do here that's really going to make a difference with my data is now he can upload the final video. And when he uploads that final video, because he's already provided all the raw footage for it here, he can come into the final video here and say, okay, you know what? This is actually a composite of other videos. And he can add the components there and say, okay, this video is actually contains these three other videos. It contains the runner, the swimmer, and the boxer video. And I can make that relationship association between the videos. And when I do that, what I get is for the final video here, I can now see that all three of those talent are contributors on this because I had all that data already. So just connecting those dots gives you a wealth of data here across all the contributors. And because of that, I can then see the rights for each one. So I know that from the runner clip, I'm getting certain rights. From the swimmer clip, I'm getting certain rights. And from the boxer clip, I'm getting different rights. So whatever the rights are for the component raw videos that were edited together to make this final one, I can see that the rights information here because I connected those dots. And what's really great is then depending again on the technology you're using, Brand Vision can do an assessment of that, but you can do a manual assessment of that depending upon how complex those rights are, or you might have some other tool that can analyze the data. But what you want to get to is how can I use this final video? And by having all that data, I can look at this video and say, this video can be used in all territories in social media between September and the middle of October. Okay, and that's because if I look at the data here for the rights, I can see that this particular the runner clip has social media, broadcast, and digital. The boxing clip also has digital, social media, and broadcast. However, Molly's agreement for the swimming only has social media. So because her agreement only allows for social media usage and you used that swimmer clip in this final video, it's restricted to social media. Now hers says you can use it until December. So why could I only use it till October? Because Adrian's agreement, she's the boxer, even though she gives you digital, social media, and broadcast, so a broader grant of rights, it's a more restrictive date. So the date is restricted to October 15th there. So when you boil that all down, you end up with, I can use this asset across all territories, social media from September through the middle of October. So by enforcing my agency to give all that data back to me, I really get a ton of visibility and a ton of value in very easily being able to understand what can be done with this talent. So now, Alan's done with this particular asset, and now he's really excited because he's done a great job of providing everything that I need. He can come into this asset and he can actually set it to like a pending status. And this is the next best practice I wanted to talk about, which is to have some sort of workflow between you and the agency so that you can help streamline and automate the review and approval process. And again, you're going to have different ways you might be able to do this. It might just be a status change like this, where I change the status to pending, and then the brand manager knows to come in and look at everything that's pending. And if they have any, revisions, they can shoot it back to the agency, or they can change it to an approved status. Or if you're a little more further along the line on the curve, you might have a workflow engine or a workflow tool that can handle that, so that the agency can actually submit this asset into an approval workflow, and it can go to the brand manager. So Alan's going to set it to pending. He's going to save it. It's been updated. And now Alan's done, and he can't wait to see what the brand thinks. So let's log out as Alan now, and let's log back in as the brand manager so we can see the results of this from the brand perspective. So as the brand manager, when I sign in, I can see I'm in my Susie Blues corporate space here. So again, I can see everything. But if I switch over to my A+ agency space, I can see all the stuff that Alan uploaded here. And I can also see that he's uploaded the component videos as well as the final video, which is great. And I can, again, review that final video. And so I can take a look at it, and I can go in and I can see, are there rights provided? Look at that. He provided all the rights data for me, so I can see it all. So then I can just, set this to an active status if I want, and approve that so that Alan knows that that I've approved this asset, and all is well and good, and the process is working. Now, I want to use this for my campaign. So because I have all that data available, I can really easily say, okay, I want to run a clearance for this, so I can check if I can use it in the way that I intended to use it in. So for example, let's say I wanted to use this from September 1st through the end of the year, say. And I want to use it for North America, and I want to use it for digital and social. And then I can real time get a clearance answer because I've got all that data in the system. Now, again, Brand Vision has this capability to do clearance. Your tool may or may not have that. But again, having that data, you can easily get to this answer as well in a variety of ways. Here, because again, I've made that association. I have the rights data, so I can see that it's partially available. It's only partially available for what I asked for. But I can now drill down because I made that association between the assets, and I can see where the problem is with this partial availability. So I can see that for the swimmer, I don't have digital rights. And then you might remember, because Molly's agreement didn't have digital rights. So I can only use this for social media because this talent restricts my use of this clip to social media, and it's contained in the final clip. So it's restrictive. Okay, and then this one's also yellow, so I can drill down into the boxing, which was Adrian's agreement, and they're both yellow. So that means digital and social media are available, but only partially. So if I drill down one more level, I can actually see the date range, because you'll remember we captured the data that Adrian's contract only went through the middle of October. So this is only green through the middle of October, and then it becomes red. So I can only use this on social media through the middle of October. And I got that information in real time here, and I can adjust as needed. So I can either then go back to my agency and say, hey, I need to get digital rights from Molly in order to do what I want to do, or I can adjust my campaign goals, right? So in this case, let's adjust the campaign goals and just say, okay, you know what? We will only run this through October, and we will only run it on social media. And when I do change my campaign goal like that, boom, now I get a green. And if I look at that, they're all green because that's all within my parameters. So with that data and those asset relationships defined by your agency, you really get the ability to toggle and look at the different ways you can use this asset in campaigns and what you can and can't do with it. So it's super powerful. Now, One of the mottos, we have at Fidel is don't publish and forget. So when I publish this on TikTok, because I've now limited my campaign to social media. So let's say I go out and I now publish this final video on TikTok. Don't publish and forget, right? You want to be able to track that video beyond publishings because you're going to want to know that you have expiring assets coming up on your TikTok or your Facebook or your website or wherever you might have digital content that you sent out. So you're going to want to be able to track that and find that asset out there so that you can get expiration information. So again, you're not going to be able to do that if you don't have the expiration data from your agency. And I'm not going to go deep into tracking today. That's a whole nother part of what we offer at Fidel. So we have tracking, and you can see it's pointed at my TikTok site here, and I can go into TikTok and see all the videos on my TikTok and see where I have assets that are published on TikTok. That's a webinar for another day, or you can find me at the Damn Show if you want to hear more about that. But the point is, I won't be able to do any of that tracking or have it be useful unless I have this information about the rights and the expirations, and I know, if I have expiring assets or if I need to renew or extend. And if you do have that data, then it's very easy to, again, to go back to your agency and say, I need to extend an asset, I need to renew rights, I need to get a new channel for these rights from this talent. And you can really easily track that all the way back through the asset, to the talent and to their agreement, to be able to look at that agreement and know exactly what rights you need to extend there in order to be able to do what you want to do. Again, reuse also. So if I want to reuse this particular asset of a particular piece of this asset, like the boxing piece here, I know I can come in there and see what I can do with that boxing piece. And you remember that agreement was a little broader, so I can use that in all territories on broadcast, digital, social media. So if I want to recut a different version of the video, I can use this clip, or I can take this clip out if I'm restricted by it. All those decisions, strategic decisions that you can make, are all facilitated by having the data of those assets in the system and having all the information tied back to that. And again, if I need to come back to this later, I can very easily come back to my project and see all my talent, all the assets tied to it, all the agreements that it's tied to, and I can get to that data very easily so that I can make those decisions. So on top of that, the last thing you want to do as a best practice is make sure you have some reporting around this, ideally. So you want to make sure that now that you have all that data and you have that real-time clearance capability, real-time view into availability and rights and agreements and talent, that you also have some kind of reports that you can run and access over time. So things like a list of your agreements, so you can have all the agreements that you have for talent, and a view into those at any time where you can see all of the agreements that you have, or my assets, all the assets that I have in the system. Here's all the assets that were uploaded and who the contributors are, etc. Simple reports like that, or more complex reports that start to get into violation or expiration. So if you have violations in usage that you might have there, I don't know if we'll have any because we didn't go into the tracking. But you want to have reporting around expiration. So when my assets are expiring, so that I can run a report and see, okay, whoa, this boxing clip is expiring in 13 days. So if I have a use for that going forward, I'm going to need to be able to extend those rights so I can get more usage out of that particular data. And then, information, helpful to have from an agency perspective, information also about clearance history by users, what your users are doing, user reports, things like that, so that you can monitor what your agency is doing as far as use of the system and the number of assets they're uploading, the number of agreements they're creating, things like that. And for your brand users, the things they're clearing, how they're clearing it, what they're using, so that you can determine what to reuse or what to expand over time. So that's the demo. So let me flip back over here to the slides just to kind of wrap it up. So I think you saw the result there really before your eyes, which is real transparency into a ton of data all centralized in one place. And all I really had to do was provide a space and a methodology for the agency to do that. You don't need all the technology bells and whistles that I showed. I mean, they're great. And if you can get to that, that you unlock a lot more value and potential if you're using a tool like the one we looked at. But there's multiple ways to come at this. The important thing is to provide a place and a way and a method for your agency to provide that. And then you'll see the transparency that you'll get into that data. And it's going to make you more efficient. It's going to make your process more streamlined. It's going to unlock content reuse capabilities. And it's going to mitigate the risk of having a violation based on usage or expiration because you're going to have much better view into all that data. So just to recap, and then I think we'll have time for some questions. The best practices here, again, leverage technology however you can. However, push yourself up that maturity curve. So if you're working in email today, try to move up to something more like a file share or a Dropbox, right? If you're working with a Dropbox today or something, try to move up to more of a collaborative workspace or workflow tool or a secure portal. Try to move up on that curve and implement a bit more technology to help with this. Make sure it's secure though. Make sure it's secure access so you can differentiate between multiple external agencies you're working with or between your internal and external agencies and be able to tailor that based on the needs of your campaign. Really organize a place to capture and organize the pre-production and WIP assets. That really is also going to unlock a great amount of data that flows from the underlying assets, especially if you're working with video and with multiple talent in videos and in different video clips that are edited together, which is where everything is going, right? So if you're working with that, then having access to that WIP data is really, really helpful. Capture everything up front, push it to the front of the process as much as possible, push the agency to capture the talent rights and the agreements up front and give you that information so that you know you have it. But when you get to the end, you know you already have it. You don't have to scurry back to them to try and get information after the fact. See if you can make those relationships between the assets, between the pre-production WIP assets and the final asset. If you can make that connection, either in this portal or in your DAM or wherever you can make that connection and enforce it with your agency, you're going to be able to then more easily understand for that final asset the rights and the requirements based on the underlying content that was used in it. And again, that's going to unlock reuse decisions because if you want to reuse that final video, but one clip is preventing you from doing that from a rights perspective, you need to know which clip and which talent so you can either get the rights or re-edit the video and take that piece out. And that's true not just for the video clips, but for things like music or stock photography or location releases. These things run out. You might want to continue the campaign, but swap that piece out. Use automation. So workflow automation, again, it may or may not be in reach for you right now, but it's something to move towards is to have automation around the approval process and each of these tasks. So depending upon how sophisticated you want to get, you could have a workflow around each of these pieces. Did they provide the talent? Did they provide the agreements? Did they provide the WIP assets? And you could have approvals around all of those things. Maintain your compliance, enforce those. Once you have this data, don't just forget about it and not use it. Unlock it by enforcing clearance checks for your users before they publish things or before they download them from the DAM. Monitor your campaigns before and after and enforce those guidelines. Keep that transparency going with the agencies so that you can make sure that if you need to access talent rights or extend agreements or renewals, you have that access. And then again, provide reporting at the end, as much reporting as you can to track your progress, understand where you have risks, and understand where you have success. So a bunch of best practices there to take away. Again, whatever your technology setup is, I hope this will help you think about how you're interacting with your agency and collaborating and give you some great ideas on how you can just make simple asks of the agency to drop this data where you give them a space so that you can have it. Once you have it, you have a lot more powerful capabilities to use it and to get value out of it than if it's buried somewhere on somebody's hard drive at the agency. Next steps, if you want to take a deeper dive into this, love to always talk about this stuff with you. I will be at Damn New York. Several of us from Fidel will be at Damn New York. I will be there for the whole show. I actually have a couple of sessions. I'm doing a panel. I'm doing a session on AI. Um, Surprise. And so if you want to come find me there, I would love to meet you and talk to you in person. Additionally, if you want like a more in-depth guided tour of anything we demonstrated today, we'd be happy to do that for you. Just reach out to us at Solutions at Fidel and book a meeting with us. And again, I hope to see you at Damn New York. I think we got 10 minutes or so for questions. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Thank you, Greg. That was a really insightful session. Lots of tips there. So we have a few questions from our audience. First question is, what if I work with multiple agencies?
Yeah, well, lots of people do work with multiple agencies. Again, I think the key thing in working with multiple agencies is two things come to mind. One is secure space, right? So you want to make sure that you have a way to secure those two agencies so they're not interoperating or crossing wires at all, right? And again, I don't know what technology you're using. And in Brand Vision, what we showed, that would be separate business units, what we call business units. You can define two different spaces. So like I defined a space for A plus agency today. You could define a totally separate space for B plus agency, and then they're operating in two totally different spaces. If you're more in like a file share mode or something like that, again, just have separate folders for that and restrict the access to that folders. Most of the file sharing systems allow you to do that. If you're using something like a Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that, you can share those folders in a way, set up sharing so that they only have access to the things you want them to have access to. So that's one piece I would recommend. The second is consistency. Have a consistent process for all your agencies, your in-house agency as well. It's no different than external agencies. Have a consistent process that you're enforcing so that everybody is held to the same standard, everybody's accountable to that, and you're always getting the same set of data that you can then make decisions on, build reporting on, and operate on going forward.
Okay,
Hope that
thank
hope
you,
that
Greg.
helped.
I think our next question is about the demo. So in this example, it looks like the agencies would be entering the rights. Is that hard to enforce?
It can be. It can be. That's part of the challenge, and that's why having an easy way for them to do it and checks and balance on whether they did it or not. So some sort of approval step or workflow or visibility. It really helps enforce it because it can be difficult to enforce it. And if you don't do anything or you just expect them to give it to you, it's likely not going to be enforced. And if you give them a way easily to do it and you kind of mandate it the best you can. I mean, ideally, contractually, it would be great if you could, but that's not always going to work realistically. So it's a best practice to try and hold them to. But if you give them a way to do it, that's easier. It's no harder for them to do that, what I showed you, than for them to capture it in a spreadsheet on somebody's desktop. But the problem is if they capture it in a spreadsheet on somebody's desktop, you don't have visibility into it. And if you don't get that, or if it's not reviewed at the time of the assets are done, you may not be able to make the correct linkages back to that data. So it can be challenging to enforce. That's part of the message of today, I think, is to use technology to help enforce it and to help make it easier and clearer on what they need to do so that you can help enforce them to do it.
Okay, thank you, Greg. So we have another question. So if I wanted to integrate this product in my MarTech stack, could I?
Well, again, the answer, good question. Thank you. The answer to this is going to depend on whether or not what technology you're working with on this. And Brand Vision in particular has an open set of APIs, and so the message there I would say is, if you want to do integration with Martech stack, which you totally can. And I mentioned Workfront earlier, which is a definitely a point that a system that people do a lot of Martech integration with throughout the Workfront workflow processes that they set up. You want to make sure that whatever technology you're looking at or considering using has that capability. So it needs to be able to have an open API type integrative platform that you can integrate to. So you're only going to be limited by the technology you're using and what it can do. From Brand Vision's perspective, no limitation on that. There's open APIs for everything I showed. So that data can be fed in or out of the system from other systems. So once, if you have your agency, for example, capturing data into Brand Vision, you can then send that data out to other systems, whether it's your PIM or other marketing systems, or even to your DAM. You could have, for example, your agency adding assets and WIP assets into Brand Vision and final assets, but then only integrating final assets with your DAM. Because now what you can get out of that is you don't need all necessarily all the WIP assets in your DAM unless you want them, which some companies do that and some don't. But when you push that final asset into your kind of final corporate DAM, now you have all this data that goes with it around rights and everything. So you have everything you need there. You can always go back to the WIP because you have the WIP as well. So you have a lot of integration options there to consider. But again, you'll only be limited by the technology that you employ. So if that's part of your goal is to have an integrated martech stack, then you need to think about that when you're thinking about what technologies you choose for this.
Thank you so much, Greg. I think that is all the questions for today. I'd like to remind everyone that the link to access the recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone tomorrow. And if you'd like to find out more about our upcoming events, courses, and webinars, please take a look at the Henry Stewart website. And thank you again, everyone, for attending today's session. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you,
Thank you
Greg.
so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Theo. Bye.